I had to bring a bag of ice today because, oh my gosh, these takes are hot. Internalizing them, it's just heat protruding from my body. Thank you for tuning in, first responders, those upholding the economic machine, whoever you are. I'm grateful to be here with you today. This is The Tone, your favorite Carolina Panthers podcast. Dan Morgan fell in love with Tetairoa McMillan. He fell in love with the Wildcats wide receiver. We now know this because of Panthers Blueprint. It released yesterday, 6 o'clock Eastern on Panthers YouTube. Go watch it. It's out now. I didn't think Dan Morgan was as high on Tetairoa McMillan as he was. And boy, was Dan Morgan high on the college wide receiver. We're going to go into that, what Morgan had to say. But first, Cameron DaSilva, writer for RamsWire, says it would have taken a king's ransom to get Dan Morgan and the Panthers to trade the 8th overall pick to Los Angeles for the 26th overall pick and whatever else the Rams would have to add to that concoction. A king's ransom. But Morgan said no. In the Blueprint video, Morgan, Tillis going back and forth with the Rams front office. A couple of times they exchanged trades. Morgan was quoted saying, it's like if they want this, talking about the 8th overall pick, they're going to have to go above and beyond. Kind of like what they did to us last year when they gave us the 2. They're going to have to go be above and beyond king's ransom. LA came with the trade. Morgan picks up the phone and he's sweating. He's almost scared because he doesn't want Los Angeles to go through with this trade. They make a counteroffer to LA. It was a king's ransom, like the Rams writers are writing about. LA said no. And next thing you know, Morgan gets a guy, Tetairoa McMillan worth millions. And they made him worth millions when they picked him at 8. Morgan said, I was convicted. On our guy. I really don't want to lose this player. That's what Dan Morgan had to say when the Rams came calling. But if we're going to lose the player, it's something that could potentially set us up for the future if we get loads out of picks out of them. And it's funny because he goes, kind of like what they gave us last year. Morgan said they're going to have to do a trade similar to last year. And the Panthers, on paper fleeced the Rams. They gave up the 39th overall pick to LA in exchange for 52, a 5th, and an additional second rounder. So the Panthers did add a ton of value when they traded back with LA in 2024, and they would have to add a ton of value, an astronomical, a king's ransom amount of value to trade out of 8 to give up on their guy. And I find it amazing because all this talk about how Dan Morgan wanted defense potentially, there were reporters all over the place talking about Dan Morgan trading down, Panthers trading down, especially in the first round. It seemed for sure, and Dan Morgan even admits it, that the Panthers wanted to stay in the first round. They weren't going to go and trade their 8th overall pick and trade out of the first round. They wanted to stay in the first round. But pre-draft, if I asked you what you thought the Panthers were going to do, the majority, I guarantee, if we did a survey, 50% plus of people would admit that they thought the Panthers were going to trade down. I honestly thought they were going to trade down and get one of the tight ends. I thought Tyler Warren, maybe Loveland, but definitely Warren. You get him in the middle of the first round, or maybe trade back and get an edge rusher, who knows? Well, it would have taken a king's ransom when push came to shove, when the gun was to their head, when Dave Canales, David Tepper, Dan Morgan, and Brant Tillis are sitting at the table making the decision. Dan Morgan was ecstatic, according to Panthers Blueprint. And I know some people out there are going to go, well, the Panthers are just controlling the clips and they're clipping it to make it seem like Dan Morgan loved T-Mac. Maybe there's a little bit of truth to that. There could be a little bit of truth. But, you know, you can't remove the words from his mouth when he's sitting there basically not wanting Los Angeles to accept the trade. Basically not wanting Los Angeles to send the Kings ransom. And at the very least, he doesn't want Tillis and co. accepting whatever the actual offer was. And it would be nice to get some insight. Because what if I told you the Panthers could have had 2 or 3 first-round picks from the Rams? You get the 26th overall and then a first in 2026, and then whatever else the Rams offer. 2, 3 first-round picks for number 8 or whatever a King's ransom would be. Would you take it? Would you take it? I don't know. Well, this was also very interesting, and I have the quote from Brant Tillis here talking about the Panthers' stance on Mason Graham, a guy who is extensively linked to the team. I think it was Jalen Walker who had the most buzz. That seemed to be the Panthers guy. Hometown kid from Salisbury, North Carolina. Jalen Walker, who went to Atlanta. It was also Mason Graham. Not that you needed a defensive tackle, but a guy that at least pre-draft was supposed to be this generational talent. We'll see how that pans out in Cleveland. This is what Brant Tillis had to say on Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan.
When Mason got picked, I knew we were going to have an opportunity to trade our pick. We had action.
At first, watching the Panthers blueprint, I hear Tillis say that, and I go, was he saying that they thought Graham was the guy, he was the guy they were taking, and they're like, oh, Cleveland just took him at, 5, so now we don't have to worry about picking him so we can trade back. At first, that's how I read it, but I actually misinterpreted what he was saying. What Tillis is saying is the Browns got Mason Graham, and Dan Morgan actually goes, good. So he looks at Tillis and goes, good, the Browns took Mason Graham. As if Mason Graham was never the guy. They didn't even want anything to do with him. They just wanted the Browns to take him because that would mean they're not going receiver. They knew that the Jets and the Raiders were more than likely not going to go Tetairoa McMillan. The Raiders liked their guy. They liked Genty. Consensus, that was the guy going to Vegas. The Jets needed a tackle. They needed a tackle. Dan Morgan, he knew it. The Browns go Mason Graham. He says, good. Tetairoa McMillan is falling in our laps. Falling in our laps. They knew the Jets or Raiders weren't going to take the Arizona wide receiver. And Mason Graham was never the guy. Never the guy. So it was Tetairoa McMillan or trade. Or trade. Whatever the King's ransom that Los Angeles was offering or maybe was considering offering to Carolina. Those were your 2 routes in the 2025 NFL draft. That is what history will be. The Panthers went T-Mac. They didn't trade back when the offer was there. David Tepper, pretty much silent the entire time in the Panthers blueprint video. Who knows? Maybe they just didn't include clips. I did find an interesting piece where Dan Morgan was talking about David Tepper. And again, this is after a spot that Dan Morgan did on the Pat McAfee show where he talked about his great relationship with David Tepper. He did almost like an advertising piece for the Panthers owner. I said how much he loved him. And McAfee, to his credit, was probing a little bit. He was trying to get some juice. And he did not fold over. Dan Morgan just stands by it. Loves Tepper. In the blueprint video, Dan Morgan consistent. He goes, Tepper, I actually turned him for business advice. And I found that interesting. Like, there's two things you want from David Tepper at this point in time. One is emotional involvement, because we all think he's hands off. And I'm going to tell you even furthermore, we know that Tepper is much more hands off. He's leaving the football operation to football people. We know this. But I do want Tepper to be emotionally involved. I don't want him to be like John Henry or one of these owners in sports that treats it like they're running a fast food franchise. Like, they just need to make ticket sales, they need to get advertising revenue, and just be done with it. It's just a cash cow. They're in their fuzzy socks at 7 p.m. on the couch watching Netflix. They don't care about the sports team. Tepper is emotionally involved. So he came out too strong for the past few seasons. It's like he's too involved, too invested in this thing. His ego's just hemorrhaging into the football team. And it's a disaster. But now Tepper has matured and he's emotionally involved in the thing. He's still going to, we presume in 2026 and 2027 when the cap opens up, because that's what matters, I guess, spend a lot of money. He's going to fill some of the holes that they still have across the defense and maybe bring in whatever offensive help they need, maybe a tackle with Moton aging and whatever the future for Akemekwanu is. You might need an offensive line piece. Tepper's presumably invested in this thing enough to spend the money. That's good news. And here's what McAfee had to say about David Tepper. This was on his show today. Panthers actually getting some really positive coverage at the national level.
What I noticed, though, was there's one point they looked at Tepper to get an answer. Tepper didn't say shit. All anybody has said about Tepper is that he's hands-on, too handsy, he's too involved. He's not letting the football people do their thing. We just watched in the biggest moment for their franchise. First-round pick, top 10 pick. He just sat there and let everybody do their jobs. I think if you're a Panthers fan, you love everything you saw there.
And you love that coverage. Again, this is a guy a couple of years ago throwing beer on a fan in the media. Just every every talk show just bashing the guy. He's too handsy, in the words of Pat McAfee. Tepper's too handsy, too overly involved in the football operation. Well, now McAfee really just echoing a lot of the things that Dan Morgan said a month ago or so when he was on the show, talking about how great David Tepper's been. And I do agree mostly. I think he's been hands off. I think the only thing Tepper's been touching is the business side of it. And Morgan, again, I take business advice from this guy. We ask him about the business stuff. So he's still, if you take what the team is saying at face value, giving some input to the business side of it, whatever that is, but mostly hands off. Dan Morgan seems to be the executive. He seems to be the decision maker. Brant Tillis is like the data, just like super nerd. He sits in the room. He's got the spreadsheets. He's got the value tables. He knows if we take this guy here, it's good value. If we trade back here, it's good value. We're not going to pay this guy X million dollars more because it's actually a bad contract. So he's got all the spreadsheets, but then the executive, the guy that sits there and stamps the thing, clearly is Dan Morgan. But there's other voices in there. Bryce Young, Dave Canales have massive voices with regards to the personnel decisions. We're going to go over that. We're also going to talk about this. Carolina Panthers sign a veteran who took a hometown discount. Stay tuned on The Tone. This is The Tone,
Your favorite Carolina Panthers podcast.
The Tone. It's literally 110 degrees upstairs, and it's because these takes are so hot. Mike Kaye writes, why Austin Corbett returned to Panthers without guaranteed spot? Charlotte Observer. Austin Corbett takes a team-friendly deal, and look, I don't tell you what you want here. There's so many accounts. There's so many accounts. They tell you what you want to hear. Everything's great. It's all sunshine. This is not what we're going to do. We're going to tell the truth. And I am not overhyping this. Austin Corbett returns on team-friendly deal on team's terms. Now, Corbett did tell the Observer that from the family side, we absolutely love it here, talking about Charlotte. We're going to live here long-term. So like many newcomers to Charlotte, the Corbett family loves the city. But here's the quote. It feels good, Austin Corbett tells the Observer, like the energy in the locker room and the energy in the city. I know this is where the turning point is coming. I want to be a part of that. Spoke highly of Dave Canales. Being in the locker room, said Corbett, seeing the success that we had towards the end of the year, that momentum, being around Dave for a full year, how well he did in his first year, and just knowing the staff, the front office, that's not something you just walk away from, said the Panthers center. Corbett accepted a deal worth $3 million in base value, and he chose not to test the market. He signed this back in March. Mike Kaye's writing about it in June, when the article released on June 2nd, yesterday. This is a turning point. It's like the unicellular organism, like old bacteria in the ocean billions of years ago. I think it's just like floating around. And you're like, this thing gave way to life. Like billions of years ago, that little bacteria just like floating around the ocean. And next thing you know, you have a human. You have a full-formed, fully evolved animal. That is what's going on in Carolina. The time frame is much faster. And this is a jump point where you have a veteran who's sitting there saying, oh no, I love Dave Canales. I love what they're doing here. I love Charlotte. I love everything about it. I want to stay here because I feel things are turning. I know I don't have a starting job. Cade Mays could be the starter in Carolina in 2025. Brady Christensen, another guy you brought back, could play center. Still, Austin Corbett, who's coming off a pretty nasty torn biceps injury, he's coming back off the injury, but he still could probably go somewhere else and start. Austin Corbett probably could get a starting job on another team. Needs a center. And on top of that, he could play guard. He excelled at guard. He, like Bradley Bozeman, what was it, last year, could probably go somewhere and thrive if he wanted to. Instead, he's choosing to stay. It might be because of the family. Look, your kids are in school. They're happy. They like the teacher. There's no weirdos. That's a big thing for parents nowadays. No weirdos. Like, it's fine to be a little weird, but like, don't be like, like real out. They like the classroom. They like Charlotte. But most importantly, Austin Corbett enjoys playing for Dave Canales. He sees the future and he says it's bright. That's what the Panthers center tells the Observer. The other takeaway of all this is you have a position battle. We actually know who the center is going to be. Well, let me rephrase that. We're confident the Panthers are going to have a pro-caliber player at center. Whether it's Cade Mays, whether it's Austin Corbett, heck, it might be Brady Christensen. We're confident the Panthers have a bona fide center. And we're not only confident in that, we're confident the Panthers have a bona fide tackle. Left to right, the Panthers' offensive line is not a question mark. And there were questions last year. There were questions. Kemekwan is the big one. It's like, who was he going to be in 2024? Josh Neiman might be taking that job over. Well, now you feel comfortable with 5 guys. You feel so comfortable with this offensive line that you have backups that you're comfortable starting. Cade Mays, Corbett, Christensen, whoever it may be. Whoever is a backup in that room, you're confident you can fill any gap due to injury. No, you're not going to replace Robert Hunt. God forbid something happens. But you're confident that you have starting caliber offensive linemen in Joe Gilbert's room. And it's reason, it's strong reason to be optimistic. Well, the national media still isn't optimistic on the Carolina Panthers, and they're not realistic. I'm the middle. I'm optimistically realistic. It's a golden area. It's the golden area. I sit here and tell you I'm high on the offense. I think the offense is going to soar. I think Bryce Young's going to be a beast. I think he might be a top 10, 15 quarterback in the league when it's all said and done this year. I'm serious. I think 9 wins, 10 wins, it's on the table, certainly. But I'm not going to be like these people online that are super hype about the defense. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I am super confident that defense is going to play at a high level. Because you're relying on a lot of rookies. At edge, it's either a rookie or a rotational player. Avero in the blueprint did say Patrick Jones would be starting. So we presume that Yemem and Scorton will probably be coming off the bench. At least to start. They might win the job in training camp. That could happen. Once these guys get pads on, maybe they excel. Needless to say, it's going to be rookies at edge. Could be a rotational player at edge. The secondary's razor thin. You have Jaycee Horn, but are you confident in Mike Jackson? Chal Smith-Wade in the nickel. Are you confident? Are you confident at safety? Morig seems to be the guy. Avero loves him. Scouted him in L.A. Says he's a real hard-hitting beast at safety. Are you confident in Lathan Ransom or Nick Scott or Damani Richardson? Whoever takes on that second safety position in Carolina. There's question marks on the defense. I'm going to be realistic with you. I'm not going to be like CBS Sports writer Cody Benjamin, who is being pessimistic about the Panthers. He's being pessimistic. That's the difference. I'm optimistically realistic. Cody Benjamin, writer at CBS Sports, is being a little pessimistic, in my opinion. Cody, love you, mean it, but a little bit pessimistic. He had the Panthers ranked at 11th. 11th of 12 teams most likely to win their first Super Bowl. This is teams that have never won a Super Bowl. There's 12 of them. Of those 12 teams, which ones are most likely? Well, the Bills, the Bengals, obviously. Well, Panthers were 11th. The Panthers were least likely of these teams to win the Super Bowl. Benjamin had the Panthers ranked behind Tennessee, Atlanta, freaking Jacksonville. Freaking Jacksonville is more likely to win the Super Bowl than the Panthers, according to this report. And Arizona. Arizona, I think, could be a sleeper team. I included them in there, but I do think Arizona could be a pretty dang good team if Kyler Murray looks the part. But Jacksonville, Tennessee, Atlanta, like really? I think the Panthers 100% are better than the Titans and the Jaguars. And I'm fairly certain the Panthers are better than the Falcons. In fact, the only team less likely to win the Super Bowl than the Panthers, according to this CBS Sports article, is the Browns. So at least the Panthers are ahead of the Browns by this metric. Because if they were behind the Browns, well, it'd be a real toilet bowl of a day to be a Panthers fan. And Cody Benjamin, he writes, Dave Canales may have Bryce Young on the right track, and the young quarterback has seen big stages before. We're still not sure about Young's NFL ceiling, though, and his pass-catching corpse still feels like a major work in progress. And I read this, I go, was I stoned all of last season? Like, did I just, miss it? You know, a college kid on the couch was like, just zoning out the whole NFL season. Because I don't feel the same way about Bryce Young. He's not sure about Young's ceiling. The pass catching corps still feels like a major work in progress. Like, I can't say I agree with that. You added Tetairoa McMillan. I thought the pass catchers down the stretch looked pretty promising. Leggett was injured late in the year, had some issues with the drops. The hands were an issue. But he's your wide receiver 2 now. Thielen's healthy. Thielen still looks good. Jalen Coker, a dark horse. He could emerge as, I wouldn't be surprised if he was a starter. Jalen Coker looks like a beast at times last year. So I don't think it's a major work in progress. Are there going to be some growing pains? Probably. And we're still not sure about Young's NFL ceiling. Maybe I just need to be grounded on Bryce Young. I'm a lot higher on Bryce Young than CBS writer Cody Benjamin, clearly. I think Young, down the stretch, again, those last few games, taking Kansas City down to the wire, taking Philadelphia down to the wire. You only put up 16 points, but still, you made it a game. Bryce Young made some throws. Remember that game at Philadelphia? Spun around, led that 90-yard-plus drive, whatever it was. Avoided the safety, got the ball out. I believe Leggett made the catch on the sideline, if I'm not mistaken. Made some throws down the stretch. Bryce Young inspired confidence. He inspired so much confidence that the Panthers went out and selected his guy in the draft. They literally, the first minute of Panthers blueprint was Tetairoa McMillan talking about how great Bryce Young was in high school, how he watched him and he said he kicked his butt on ESPN because Bryce Young, well, at Martyr Day, played Tetairoa McMillan's high school and beat them on national television. But McMillan walks into the locker room, first minute of Panthers blueprint, and he goes, I got my bro right next to me. And he's pointing to the locker, and it's Bryce Young's jersey hanging up next to McMillan's. Their lockers are next to each other. First minute, like the guy gets off the plane, the first thing he does is walk to the locker next to Bryce Young and say, I got my bro next to me. So clearly the Panthers are very high on Young, enough to go and get his bro. But some reporters don't have as much faith in the Panthers, and that's because they don't believe that Young has a high NFL ceiling. We don't know that. We're still unsure, says Cody Benjamin.
This is The Tone, your favorite Carolina Panthers podcast. The Tone.
You can never delete it. It's on the internet. You sent the text. You can never delete it. Someone should have told Jaycee Horn that today. He tweeted out, quoting a post from Pro Football Focus that ranked the top 10 cornerbacks, is in fact the top 32 in the NFL. Horn ranked 25th. He took to X. The Panthers corner wrote, "This what happened when you let nerds who never touched a field feel like they know ball, man." And this article on Pro Football Focus ranked 32 corners, and 24 were ahead of Carolina Panthers corner Jaycee Horn, John Costco, with an article. There's two types of people. There's people like us that watch the broadcast, they give it the eye test. Depending on how the game's going, we might have some, let's call it whiskey glasses on, right? Panthers are a lot more enjoying to watch when you've had a couple beers. And we give it the qualitative eye test. We look at the product and we say, this is pretty good. It was pretty good. And with Jaycee Horn, it was great last year. Pro Bowler, great corner, made some plays, kept you in games, was a leader. That's big reason you signed him when you did. He was a leader. Dave Canales talked about how much Horn helped him, echoed what the Panthers coach said. Dan Morgan, when deciding to give Horn the extension, they didn't have to. They could have kept on the fifth-year option. When extending him, the Panthers front office raved about his leadership attributes. Horn stepped in for Derek Brown, who had a terrible knee injury early in the season. Horn stepped up, I should say, becoming a leader on that defense and even in the locker room in general. Say, arguably, unequivocally, one of your greatest vocal leaders last season was Jaycee Horn. PFF lists him at 24th behind guys like Teron Johnson in Buffalo, A.J. Terrell in Atlanta, and the obvious ones, Sauce Gardner, Pat Surtain. Elite corners. Can't expect that Jaycee Horn's in the top 2, top 3. I think Sauce Gardner is just on a different level, generally. But this is based on metrics, based on Pro Football Focus's advanced coverage grade, which takes into account factors like the ability to prevent separation, the difficulty of assignment. If you're going up against Justin Jefferson, you're going to have a better advanced coverage grade, says PFF, because he's a better receiver than going up against the XFL guy. He's a lot easier to cover. You just kind of throw him out there on an island, press him a little bit, and he just falls over. But it also takes into account plays when the corner is not targeted, which I find fascinating. Because everyone who's talking, including me, we're subservient to the broadcast. It's like we watch the broadcast, we see the plays that the camera's targeting, and we see the plays where Jaycee Horn's getting targeted by quarterbacks, and that's how we give it the eye test. That's how we say at the end of it, wow, Jaycee Horn played really good. Well, this advanced coverage grade by PFF takes into account moments even when we're not looking. Even when the corners aren't targeted. What are they doing? That's how AI takes over. They can look at things when we can't even look at them. It's always processing. It always is. The machine's always moving. The gears are always moving. Unlike my brain, evidently. And that's why we have these coverage grades. Look, I believe it's all a combination of factors. It's quantitative. Whatever the PFF grade is, I'll give that merit. But I'll also give merit the eye test. The eye test matters. How a guy looks matters. I'm confident with Horn being the primary corner in this room. I still think they need to do depth. I don't have faith in Mike Jackson and Charles Smith-Wade to do enough for that secondary to be good enough to consistently, show up. And someone said it in the comments, and I'll reiterate it. They said the NFC South is not good enough. The Panthers defense can be mediocre. They can still win the South. I totally agree with you. I totally agree 100%. But I still think they should do more in the secondary because they're going to be band-aiding a lot of it. Like Moehrig and Horn, you're very comfortable with. Damani Richardson and Lathan Ransom at that second safety spot. Charles Smith-Wade in the nickel. Mike Jackson on the other side of Horn. I don't have as much faith in all of that upholding. I don't have any faith in individually guys going out there and exceeding expectations past our wildest imaginations. Like people seem to think because we're in the offseason, all those guys are going to be Pro Bowlers. I don't think that happens. But what PFF writes here, John Costco writes, he goes, Horn is talented, but has struggled with injuries. Despite being the league's second highest paid corner, Horn ranks 23rd in advanced coverage grade over the past 3 seasons. And generally, John Costco, like the retail giant, no, just kidding, it's with a K, says that the grade's not that great. A.J. Terrell, other players ranked ahead of Horn. I don't think that should have anything to do with the contract, though. So right now, at this point in history, maybe the Panthers did overpay Jaycee Horn, who's the second highest paid in the league. But to me, the decision to pay Horn had a lot to do with 3 things. One, scarcity. You literally didn't have another corner. There's no other options. You're not going to draft one. The other thing is the leadership. They love the guy. He's a leader, a vocal leader in that locker room. And third, and most importantly, the Panthers paid Horn because they knew a threshold was going to be set. And when Sauce Gardner gets paid, when Gardner gets that contract, it's going to completely revolutionize what corners are paid across the league. I mean, you remember when Darrelle Revis got paid. You remember when Revis got paid. That completely reset the league. He held out. I mean, in New York, it was a nightmare. He was so good, it completely changed how corners get paid across the league. Sauce Gardner's going to do the same thing. So might as well sign Jaycee Horn now before the market gets completely reset. That's it for this segment. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is The Tone. We have so much more planned for you. Continue to tune in. Next show will be coming on Saturday.